In this interview coaching session, I'm going to do a deep dive on key behavioral interview questions and answers. Although I usually cover tough interview questions and answers on this channel, I don't always get a chance to cover some of the regular questions I get, particularly about behavioral questions. So we're going to focus on that in this interview coaching video. I'm Amri Celeste, your interview coach. Now I'm also going to cover whether or not you should use the STAR method in your answers. It's a brilliant method to use, but it's not always the most effective structure for every behavioral interview question, and I haven't covered that enough on my channel. I also want to congratulate some of you that are already getting results so far this year. Congratulations, amazing successes. Keep sharing your results, please. It's so inspiring. And as I mentioned, we're going to break down some questions and answers that fall into the behavioral bracket so that you can understand how to design your answers and also get used to what to look out for and what specific elements to include in your answer and in your interview. And then you'll get used to being able to just throw together your own answers on the spot, which will increase your interview confidence. And then you can actually start to enjoy interviews. Yes, it is possible. So this will also include how to answer if you don't have experience, common mistakes, multiple examples that you can use, how to link your answer to the role, how to structure your answer, and what is being assessed in each question so that you know what types of examples to use. Now, if you want an interview coaching video on a specific topic, let me know so that I can design an interview coaching session specifically for that. And if you haven't, then do subscribe and let's jump in. So what is a behavioral interview question and why are they asked? Of course, behavioral interview questions assess your behavior, things like your character, your morals, your values, how you handle various situations that commonly occur in a work setting. So things like conflict, pressure, teamwork, failure, and success. This is why behavioral questions are questions like, describe a time when you helped someone, what motivates you, what is your greatest achievement, and how do you evaluate success? Maybe even how would you deal with a difficult client or customer? Tell me about a time you had a conflict at work. There's a theme there, and these are the types of questions we're going to break down. The first question is, describe a time when you helped someone. So an example answer is, I was working on the front desk at a hotel last year when a guest came up and asked for directions to the nearest grocery store. I could tell from the map he was holding that he was staying at our hotel. So I offered to walk him there as I was due to go on a break shortly. He accepted, and I spent the next 10 minutes walking with him and showing him where everything was. When we got back to the hotel, he thanked me and said that he really appreciated it and that it made his stay so much better. It felt personally rewarding to know that I was able to help out fully, as opposed to just pointing him in the right direction and hoping that he ends up in the right place. It also made me realize how important it is to be friendly and go the extra mile for our guests. So this is an easy, simple, short answer to start, not about solving a complex problem, just taking one small step to go above and beyond what you do day to day. So it's most effective here, where it adds that not only did you walk the person there, but you also took the time to show him where everything was, a clear action that you took to be helpful. Now, I use the STAR method to answer this question because it's asking for an example of a specific time when something happened. And the STAR method is excellent at helping to give you a rounded and comprehensive example in your interview that includes a specific situation. So what is the STAR method? STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. So it's called the STAR interview method as well, or STAR technique. It's excellent for many interview questions, but not all, as I mentioned at the beginning. This method works particularly well for situational interview questions and answers. Situational interview questions are where your interviewer is asking for a situation where something happened. And these types of questions can often start with, describe a time when, tell me about a time when, or situation where, just like in this question. So this question is both behavioral and situational, as it's also assessing your collaborative behaviors. If situational questions are tricky for you, you're not alone. They're difficult for many candidates. So I've covered the top 15 situational interview questions and answers in this video. I'll link that in the video description below. So why do interviewers ask this question? It's important to know so that you know what types of examples to include. So So first, interviewers are assessing things like your empathy and compassion. The way you answer can demonstrate your ability to recognize how others may be struggling. It shows how you relate to other people's experiences and your ability to react with understanding and with kindness. So one of the other things people miss is that this is assessing your communication skills as well. So the way you describe your situation and your role in it can give the interviewer insights into your communication style and ability. Also, a proactive attitude is another thing that they're assessing. So do you take action and get involved when you see that someone is in need? Now, here's some examples that you can use to answer this question. So assisting a new colleague is one. You could talk about a time when a new member of staff joined your team, maybe recognizing that they were struggling with something, maybe to understand their responsibilities or other parts of the role. You took it upon yourself to guide them, explaining the intricacies of their role, helping them fit in with the rest of the team. Another example is helping a customer. So if you've worked in a customer-facing role, there might be a situation where the customer had an issue that seemed unsolvable at first, but by going above and beyond, perhaps by escalating their problem and overseeing the issue or coming up with a creative solution, you managed to resolve their problem. Now, one more example could be taking the lead on a project. There could be a situation where a project was on the verge of falling apart due to lack of leadership or coordination. So stepping in and assuming a leadership role, maybe you rallied the team, redefined roles and set up new communication channels, which could have then led to the project's success. And this might be suitable for a leadership or management role to demonstrate that you have those skills. Now let's look at mistakes to avoid with this question. So the most common mistakes with this question are, first of all, not highlighting your role. So it's important to emphasize your personal contribution to the situation. Don't use the phrase we too much and focus more on what you specifically did to help the person or resolve the situation. The second most common mistake is neglecting to mention the outcome. This is really common, so don't forget to explain what happened as a result of your actions. The outcome is a crucial part of your story and it helps to demonstrate the impact of your assistance. This is why the STAR method is so powerful in answering this type of question that involves describing a time or a situation. The next behavioral interview question is what motivates you. So here's an example answer. As a salesperson, what motivates me are the regular challenges set by the nature of the job and the sense of fulfillment that I get from closing each sale, surpassing my targets, and having the opportunity to use and grow my negotiation and persuasion skills. For example, I worked on quite a difficult sale that took longer to achieve than I planned, but I persevered because I knew the payoff for myself and for the company would be worth the sale. And so would the sense of achievement and recognition. So I pushed through answering every objection my client had and continued following up because I was motivated by the challenge and the journey. Now, if this is helpful and you're getting value so far, do click like and leave a comment below. It's immensely helpful in getting this video in front of more people who struggle with behavioral questions. If you've had results already, you can buy me a coffee. There is a link below in the description below this video to show you how to do that if you would like to. And you can also support the channel by joining as a channel member. You can do that by clicking the join button below this video. So this is a way to support consistent content on this channel for just $4.99 a month. And you'll get a loyalty badge, priority response to your comment or question, plus instant access to all of these interview toolkits, and you can cancel at any time. Now let's look at the best part of that answer to what motivates you for you to use in your interview. So here, where it addresses the personal motivations that link directly to the job, it centers on the emotional link and sense of personal achievement, and it allows you to continuously hone your skills in that profession. Now, this doesn't fully fit the STAR method. It doesn't include a result or a comprehensive example, but it is a strong, good mini example to back up the why behind your motivations. It builds up the interviewer's awareness and understanding of your character, and it creates authenticity. So although this is a sales example, let's say you were answering this for a customer service role, you could highlight your ability to connect with people and solve problems because maybe you enjoy connecting with people and are considered a problem solver in your personal life. And then you might go on to then give an example of solving a problem in your interview to really strengthen that. Now let's look at how to structure your answer. So I mentioned earlier that this example didn't fit the STAR method exactly, so here's the best way to structure your answer. Start with an introductory statement on what generally motivated you. Give an example, so elaborate on your initial statement with an example like in that answer where it states, for example, so relate to the position or company. So here, explain how your motivations align with the responsibilities of the role you're being interviewed for and the company's values or their mission. Include future goals and aspirations as well. So briefly mention how your motivations relate to your goals and aspirations in your career to demonstrate that you have considered how the role fits into your career path. So this isn't essential, but it can strengthen your answer in some cases. And lastly, conclude confidently. So end with a concise conclusion that summarizes your main points and reflects your motivation and enthusiasm for the role. So why do interviewers ask this question? So here, your interviewers are assessing your work ethic and values. So understanding what motivates someone can give insight into their work ethic and values. So for example, if you're motivated by helping others, it might tell the interviewer that you value teamwork, individual input, and accountability. The interviewer is also assessing your alignment with company goals. So do your motivations match the company's mission and values? So let's say you were interviewing at a technology company with brand new cutting edge products. You might be motivated by innovation and new learning that would match the company there. So you would want to demonstrate that in your interview, and you can do that by sharing the ways that you keep up to date with new products and industry changes. You might attend events or subscribe to groups or letters online with the latest. For example, I follow an artificial intelligence group on LinkedIn because I'm fascinated by what's happening in that industry. So if I was interviewing somewhere that tied into that industry, I might bring that up in my answers. So here's some examples of impressive motivations you can use. So you can use things like achieving milestones or personal goals. Of course, it's important to pick motivations that are genuine to you, but these may spark some ideas. So with milestones and goals, you would be demonstrating that you're results oriented and focus on actual accomplishments and outcomes. So for example, it could be implementing a new initiative at work or a community program. So let's say you work for a company with strong community ties. You might set a goal to implement a mentoring program for local high school students, and a milestone within this goal might be enrolling the first 50 students and matching them with mentors within the first 6 months. Another good motivation is career advancement. Sometimes a simple desire to climb the career ladder is a strong and simple motivation. And one last strong one is innovation and problem solving. So interviewers and hiring managers often love to hear that you can solve a problem that they've been having. So the desire to take on new challenges can be an effective motivation to share in an interview. It could be especially valuable in technology, engineering, and creative fields, as well as many others. Now, here's an answer to what motivates you if you don't have experience. So an example answer is, what really motivates me is a role where I can grow and have a clear impact and contribution. Throughout my time in school, I was actively involved in community service projects. For example, I volunteered at a local animal shelter, which allowed me to contribute to a cause I'm passionate about, animal welfare. This experience taught me the value of giving back and how even small actions can make a big difference in the lives of others and the community. I'm also motivated by the challenges and sense of achievement that comes from overcoming them. During my studies, I often sought out projects and assignments that pushed me out of my comfort zone. For instance, I took on a leadership role in a group project which helped me develop my communication and problem-solving skills. So the next behavioral question is, what is your greatest achievement? A really common one. An example answer is, my greatest achievement to date would have to be the organization of a community cleanup volunteer project. I volunteer in my personal life. It's one of the things that attracted me to this company. I noticed that you have volunteer days and work with local environmental projects. I was really excited when I was able to bring that passion of mine into my last role. I was asked to put together a quarterly volunteer project, and this involved coordinating and leading a team of about 50 volunteers. And it took a significant amount of planning, communication, and leadership as well in order to pull off the event. I was really proud of our efforts, and as a group, we were able to make a notable difference in our local area, particularly in 2 local parks and the local beach as part of the cleanup effort, as well as bringing together a diverse group in the community to get involved. The success of this project wasn't just measured by the number of volunteers, but also by the outcome of the event, the feedback from the community and the satisfaction of everyone who participated. It was incredibly rewarding as an experience and one that had a lasting impact on me. Now let's look at why this answer would be successful and the ways that you can craft your own answer that's very similar for the role that you're interviewing for, and I'll include some examples as well. So with this answer, you're verbally linking your example of an achievement to the role here, where it says, it's one of the things that attracted me to this company. I noticed that you volunteer and work with local projects. You're specifically showing what you picked up while you prepared for the interview and searched their site and other places online. In your interview, even if you're using an example that seems linked to the company, make that clear to the interviewer, state the obvious, and verbally link your achievement to the role, the team, or the company, just like in that answer. So why do interviewers ask this question? This question is reviewing significant achievements in your career, as well as what you consider to be a success. Your answer can share a great deal about your values, your preferences, and how you approach work, even your work ethic and resilience, as sometimes achievements can involve overcoming obstacles or challenges depending on the example that you choose. I highly recommend you use an answer that demonstrates a behavior or skill required in the role or is linked to something that the company does. So in this example, it was charity work. That would work really well if the company have either maybe done voluntary work or encouraged this in their employees, or even they might have a designated charity that they give to, perhaps if you were interviewing at a charity or voluntary organization. So now let's say that you weren't expecting this question. Coming up with an answer that matches the role or the company can be tricky on the spot, and that's why you need to prepare in advance. You need to review the job description and search popular areas online like LinkedIn and news announcements to see what the recent activity is in the company and what they stand for, so that you know what types of examples to share in your interview. Now, should you use the STAR method to structure your answer for this question? For this answer and some other behavioral questions, I don't recommend the STAR method. So this is assessing character and behavior and not real life examples and situations that demonstrate a specific skill or competence. And I think that the answer to this question is stronger without including a formulaic example. Now, here's some examples of effective achievements you can use. Successfully leading a high stakes project to completion, implementing a new process that significantly improved efficiency, winning a prestigious industry award or recognition, exceeding sales or performance targets on a consistent basis. Now, under mistakes to avoid, a really common mistake here is being vague. Avoid giving general or non-specific responses. Interviewers want to hear about specific events and actions that you took and the results that you achieved. So the more concrete your achievement, the more credible and impressive it seems. So another mistake is failing to highlight your role. Again, sometimes candidates discuss an achievement that was more of a team effort and fail to emphasize their specific contribution. Happens a lot with this question. So the interviewer needs to understand your individual role in achieving success. Next behavioral question is, how do you evaluate success? A bit of a tough interview question there. So example answer is, I evaluate success in 2 parts. First is my ability to meet or exceed my goals. I set specific goals for myself, both short-term and long-term, and track my progress over time. The second part is to make sure that my goals are measurable. Doing this allows me to track my progress against deadlines and goalposts along the way, and allows me to celebrate small wins and measure successes against incremental achievements, as opposed to one large achievement that could potentially take years. An example of a goal I set myself based on this method is to move into a more client-focused role within 3 years, which was one of the reasons I applied for this position. To achieve this, I set smaller, short-term goals along the way. So year 1, I wanted to find a mentor in this area. In year 2, I offered to take on more responsibilities to build more of a range of experience in client services. And year 3, I invested in management training and personal development. So why do interviewers ask this question? So this question is about the interviewer understanding your perspective on things. In this case, your perspective on success, and this could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe the role includes delivering something specific and they want to understand how you might manage the ups and downs of that. That might give an indicator of how likely you are to maintain performance over time. So this answer shows that you're able to think about the wider picture than simply saying, I evaluate success by just doing something I set out to do. That's not a bad answer, and although in essence that's kind of what you're explaining, this answer is a lot more comprehensive and in-depth, and it includes an example as well. So when answering this in your interview, include an example if you want your answer to be exceptional. Just simply explaining the theory of how without an example is not as strong. So should you use the STAR method? I say you don't need to use the STAR method here. With a question like, how do you evaluate success? It's just as impactful to elaborate on your answer without the STAR technique. However, let's say there was a time in your career where you had to measure your success in a structured way. For example, let's say that you had to work to targets, and then in that situation, the STAR method could work. For example, you might start with an answer similar to that previous example. So, I evaluate success in two parts. First, based on my ability to meet or exceed my goals. I set specific goals for myself, both long-term and short-term, and track my progress over time. And then the second part is to make sure that my goals are measurable. So at this point, you could then add for example, and then give an example of a structured process you use to evaluate your success. So the type of structured process you could use is setting SMART goals. So this is a really popular form of goal setting for personal or professional goals. You might have heard of this at work, or you might already use this method. If you don't, I'll cover it here just briefly because this video is more about nailing your interview than goal setting. But SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. There are many alternatives to what each letter can stand for. So if you already know this method, for you, the R might stand for relevant, or maybe the A stands for attainable, but normally they have roughly the same meaning. Now, because this is a recognized framework for goal setting, you could include an example of a time when you set SMART goals. So goals that have a very specific outcome, they're realistic, they have a time limit or deadline, and so on. And here are some examples you can use. So a few other examples of ways to evaluate success in addition to goal setting are things like return on investment. So if you've ever been in a role where success is measured by the amount of money that you earned for the company, or the value that you contributed based on the amount of money that the company invested in something like a new system, or maybe they paid for you to get a qualification, and maybe then you were able to run a project or implement a new idea based on the knowledge you gained from that qualification that they paid for, that would be an excellent way to demonstrate how you evaluated success in that instance. Another couple of ways are customer feedback. If you've ever gained customer or client feedback in a role, that is another great way to evaluate success. Even your own personal development can be a clear gauge or indicator of success. Now let's look at how to answer if you don't have experience. So here's an example answer. I believe that evaluating success is a fundamental aspect of any role. Based on my understanding and research, it's important to have a clear set of objectives to measure against. For instance, if I were to work in this role, I would initially seek to understand the key performance indicators that are typically used in this industry. Also, I would engage with team members and supervisors to understand what has historically been considered as markers of success in this company. I also believe that asking for feedback is critical, whether from customers, colleagues, or my manager. I feel like feedback is a valuable insight into what is working well and what needs improvement. So this type of answer shows proactiveness, eagerness to learn, and also that you have explored the best ways to evaluate yourself, which shows an incredible amount of self-awareness and willingness to continually improve. So you might have noticed that this answer mentioned key performance indicators, which is another type of assessment criteria. So these are normally referred to as KPIs. I cover these in some of my HR and recruitment videos in case you've seen them. These are an excellent way of demonstrating that you understand industry jargon because you've researched it. So as opposed to having the work experience. If you don't have experience, the parts of this answer that you want to pay attention to are here. Based on my understanding and research, it's important to include something like this in your answer because it shows that yes, you might not have experience, but you have passion and you're dedicated and interested enough to research the role, typical tasks and duties, and you did this enough that you were able to pick up and understand some of the basic jargon in the industry. So this shows a level of interest and commitment to moving into that role or industry, and that type of commitment is very attractive to hiring managers. So the second part of that answer to take note of is this area here. I believe that asking for feedback is critical. The reason that this is important to demonstrate in your own answer is that it shows that you will actively seek out ways to improve yourself and your performance at work. You won't necessarily wait for your managers to come to you or wait until your performance levels drop or areas for improvement are pointed out to you. So the next behavioral interview question is, how would you deal with a difficult customer? The example answer is, I once took a phone call from an unhappy customer. He wanted to log a formal complaint and speak to management, and he didn't want to give any further information until he was speaking to a manager. I wanted to see if I could calm the customer down and find a way to resolve the issue directly with him. I responded by remaining calm and empathizing with him. I explained that I understood the issue must be quite serious and that he wanted to speak to a manager. I politely asked him if he could give me a little more information in order for me to pass him through. He explained that he'd been charged twice for an item and had been on hold for over 40 minutes. I listened to the full issue and I asked him to confirm whether I had the details correct. Then I gave him my name so that if he were cut off, he would know exactly who he spoke to and could come back through directly to me. I asked him if he would be willing to share the order details with me and I can have a quick look. He agreed, and it turned out that the customer had placed a double order and then cancelled one, which caused the double charging. So when I discovered this, I was able to reverse the order and send out a replacement receipt. I also apologized for the inconvenience. He had completely calmed down by this point and no longer requested to speak to a manager. He was satisfied with the refund and explanation and was happy to accept the resolution. Now, this is a competency-based interview question as well as a behavioral one. So competency-based interview questions assess your ability to do something and ability to carry out certain parts of the role, so they can vary. So if this question has been asked, it's likely that scenarios involving difficult customers will come up in the role that you are interviewing for, hence the question. So this fits into both behavioral and competency categories. I cover the top 15 competency-based interview questions and answers in this video. I highly recommend that you check this out before your interview so that you are not unprepared for any questions. So why do interviewers ask this? So this question is assessing your ability to manage the various difficulties presented by customers. This will be for a role that involves clients or customers, most obviously customer service, but it could also be for roles like account management, tech support, even sales support or similar. So this is assessing your empathy and your ability to maintain patience and composure and how well you articulate that in your interview. So when you're describing this situation, remember to stay calm. I've seen countless candidates get irate or defensive or move into blame mode when they're remembering an irritating or difficult customer. So one other little thing some candidates miss is an opportunity to demonstrate that they adhered to company policies. So when a customer is complaining or demanding something, it can be tempting to just skip a process or circumvent a policy to give them what they want, but remember to include what process you stuck to in the face of that difficulty. Now let's look at how to structure your answer. So for this one, I did use the STAR method. You might have noticed it here. The situation was the angry phone call. The task was to calm the customer down and solve the issue. The actions include everything you did to get more information and calm the customer down. So asking for a little more information, active listening while the customer explained the full issue, giving your name, asking them if they're willing to share the order details. And the result was the customer calmed down and apologized and was happy to accept the solution. So although this question wasn't specifically talking about a time when you dealt with a difficult customer, an example using a scenario of how you've dealt with a similar difficulty would really strengthen your answer here. So some examples you can use if you're answering this, you might involve a delayed delivery, maybe a misunderstood policy or an unreasonable demand from a customer. They might want an excessive discount or some kind of exclusive treatment. Now, how to answer this if you don't have experience. So here is an example answer for you if you don't have experience. Although I'm going to use a college project as an example here, let's say that you didn't go to college or university and you still don't have work experience. You could use examples like participating in a training program if you've ever done something like that, maybe mediating a disagreement, and it could be between roommates or housemates. So if you've ever done voluntary work, maybe you've dealt with a difficult customer, perhaps volunteering in a retail store, or maybe you're even a part of a community organisation or club, or any hobby which it involves interacting with others. So here's an example answer. Although I haven't dealt with a difficult customer in a work setting, I've certainly had experience dealing with challenging personalities. For example, a couple of months back, I was part of a college group project. One of our group members was consistently late in submitting their parts of the project, and this started causing tension in the group. One day during a group meeting, things escalated and an argument started between this person and another group member. I knew that if things continued that way, it would be detrimental to the project, the group dynamic, and the morale. I decided to step in and mediate the situation. I did this by staying calm. I knew that it was important to keep my emotions in check, even though I was frustrated. So I asked if we could all take a minute before discussing anything else. Once everyone was calmer, I spoke to the team member who was late with their submissions and asked them to share their perspective. I focused carefully on what they were saying and didn't interrupt. They explained that they were struggling with personal issues which affected their ability to contribute on time. I then asked the rest of the group to at least consider how they might feel in that situation and encourage them to think about how we could support that team member while also making sure the project stayed on track. Through this approach, I was able to de-escalate the situation in the end. Now, if you don't have experience, then here are the key parts of that answer that you could take note of. So first here, for example, so after that first area where you've addressed that you don't have experience, but you do have the skill they're trying to assess, you then give an example. So in your interview, this is key. It's 10 times easier for the interviewer to visualize you in that situation with an example of an actual time when something happened, as opposed to you just saying, yep, I can do that, trust me. So the next part is here. So this whole section about being frustrated, staying calm, and what you said here, let's all take a minute before we discuss anything further. That's key because in your answer, just saying I remain calm is a little vanilla and textbook. So adding context gives authenticity to your answer. So you're specifically including what you said to attempt to calm everyone. So in your example, remember to include exactly, what you said or did and how you diffused the situation. So next is this section here where you ask the team member for their perspective. This is important because it demonstrates empathy. So this is so often missed out in an answer, and it's key. It's very difficult to relate to someone that is being difficult in one way or another unless you are interested in their point of view. Next behavioral question is tell me about a time you had a conflict at work with examples. So an example answer is a colleague at work gained a reputation for being lazy. Multiple team members felt they had created more work for the rest of the team by not completing tasks efficiently. This went on for months and stirred up resentment and ongoing conflict with various team members. Eventually, this person became isolated from the rest of the group, and several team members told me that they were planning to report this person to management. Before we spoke to management, I sat down with the affected team members. I explained that although the actions of this person are frustrating, things seem to have escalated over the months and the working environment was now very toxic. I felt that we should communicate with this person to see if we could resolve this conflict before flagging to management. I asked if they could imagine how it might feel to be approached by management in this way, knowing that many of your colleagues had an issue but have not spoken to you. They agreed to wait until I'd spoken to this colleague. I volunteered to speak to this person one-on-one as opposed to an intimidating group conversation. They were completely aware that the mood at work had changed towards them but had no idea why. They wanted to have a happier working environment. I explained the multiple situations that had caused the frustration. And they explained they were going through a very volatile divorce which caused lack of concentration and focus at work. But they were glad I had spoken to them as they were not aware what the problem was and felt very isolated. I spoke to the team members that had an issue without disclosing specifics of my colleague's divorce. I simply explained that there were personal issues and we agreed to find a way to be more supportive of this person throughout their difficult time. They appreciated the support, and over a short period of time, their quality of work improved along with their relationship with other team members. This experience encouraged the team to communicate more when they were experiencing frustration in the future. Now, this answer is a bit longer, but it is just an example. In your answer, just include key areas and pull the most useful parts of that style of answer and incorporate it into your own answer. Of course, you'll be telling your own story, so include relevant details. So there's a lot of strong points in this answer that could be transferred to your own answer. So let's just take a look. First of all, there is the frustration with the colleague not pulling their weight. It went on for months and created resentment and a difficult working environment. In your answer, you can use examples that include an unhappy client or customer. For example, maybe someone with a long history of complaints that you then resolved, maybe a colleague that you clashed with, or a manager that did something that irritated you on a consistent basis, which damaged your working relationship with them. And you took steps perhaps to try and resolve this and repair it. So should you use the STAR method here? So you can probably spot it by now, but I use the STAR method to structure my answer to that question. You've got the situation, task, action, result. So mistakes to avoid with this one, probably the most common mistake is not to give an example of a time when. So what I mean by this is answering along the lines of, when I face conflict, I tend to do X, or I suppose I would do X, instead of an example of a time when this happened was a situation where X. So be sure to include a solid example. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what questions you have in the comments. I'm quite active in responding, and I will see you in the next video.